And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, March 29th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul Demain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at InCountryNews.com. And here are some of the news stories from the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. The Biloxi Maritime and Seafood Museum will be rebuilt at its original site on Point Cadet, Mississippi. The Sun Herald reports that FEMA and MEMA have told Biloxi officials they won't fund any additional archaeological studies to determine whether the Tullis Toledano property was a Native American burial site or for remediation cost should it prove to be an Indian burial site. The city and museum officials decided to return then to the original site at Point Cadet. The new building will cost about $6 million, which will be paid for by FEMA and insurance. The property will include a 15,000 square foot seafood museum and a 5,000 square foot Hurricane Katrina museum. And that gets rid of it as an issue about being on a possible burial site. A Las Vegas gaming management company sued the Tonkawa tribe of Oklahoma last week, alleging tribal officials violated management agreements with the company when they took over control of two tribal casinos in north central Oklahoma and barred the firm's employees from them. Goffin Gaming, which has managed the Tonkawa Indian Casino in Tonkawa and the tribe's City Lights Casino in Newkirk near the Kansas border since 2007, filed the lawsuit in Kay County District Court, claiming the tribe broke the management contracts when it forcibly evicted Goffin and its employees from the casino and took over their control. The lawsuit requests an injunction to stop the tribe's gaming commission from summarily suspending Goffin's gaming license and to return control of the tribe's casinos to the organization. Attorney for the tribe, Gary Pitchlin, said a dispute involving an alleged breach of contract by Goffin resulted in suspension of its tribal-issued gaming licenses for the casinos. The licenses were suspended on September 28th of last year, the same day the tribe ordered the company and its employees out of the casinos. Tribal Council member Kevin Edwards says he will run for chief of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. Edwards will be the first formal challenger to tribal Mike Beasley Denson, who is expected to run for his second term. Edwards says he wants to improve the financial health of the tribe. If elected, he says he wants to create an atmosphere of job security. Denson was elected in 2007, defeating longtime chief Philip Martin. Martin passed away last year. Candidates have until April 15th to qualify for the chief's position in tribal council races, and the election is coming up on June 14th. The federal government will give an estimated 145 million tons of publicly owned coal to a Texas company under an exchange backed by members of Congress that calls for future royalties and other coal reserves to go to the Northern Cheyenne tribe. The exchange is meant to address a long-standing claim by the Montana tribe that its mineral rights were mistakenly given to a private company more than a century ago. Supporters say enacting the deal could accelerate coal mining in Montana and deliver much-needed revenue to the impoverished tribe. Coal development is backed by many elected officials in Montana, but not by environmentalists who warn mining could damage local communities and ultimately contribute to climate change when the fuel is burned. The deal would prove lucrative for Great Northern Properties of Houston, which would acquire publicly owned coal beneath about 5,000 acres near Roundup in Ashland. Great Northern President Charles Kerr said last week his company would retain 60% of royalties from future leasing of that coal. The rest would go to the Northern Cheyenne tribe. A district court judge has ruled that the Meskwaki police officers in Iowa are recognized law enforcement officers in the state. Judge Ian Thornhill ruled the state's definition of a law enforcement officer applies to tribal law enforcement officers as well. The Time Republican in Marshallton reports that Thornhill's ruling last week was in the case of a woman charged with assault on a peace officer. The defense sought to dismiss the charges, claiming Meskwaki police officers are not recognized as police officers under Iowa state law. Assistant Tama County Attorney Dave Walker says the county is pleased with Thornhill's ruling and will pursue the charges in the case. Walker says if Thornhill had ruled differently, it could have jeopardized several other cases as well. The Northern Arapaho Housing Authority is receiving a $470,000 grant from the federal government. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development announced last week that the Tribal Housing Authority on the Wind River Indian Reservation in central Wyoming will receive the money as part of a $33 million in revenues awarded in Indian Country nationwide. HUD Secretary Sean Donovan says the grant program helps American Indian and Alaskan Native communities improve living conditions for hardworking families. He says the money will help to develop neighborhoods, produce affordable housing, and help create jobs. Students took turns preparing a moosehead soup recently outside the front door of Wood River Elementary School in Fairbanks, Alaska. Working on cardboard, the students sliced away at the meat from a donated moose's head under the direction of Brian Charlie and teacher Karen Dullen. Charlie came from Nenana to show the kids the correct way to use every single part of a moose head. The soup was one part of a week-long emphasis on cultural learning at Wood Driver. 5th and 6th grade students learned Alaska Native games, listened to storytellers, and made moosehead soup and fry bread. This wasn't the first time Yard A and the other 5th graders crowded around the table had learned about moosehead soup. They had watched its preparation before at Twin Bears Camp off of Chena Hot Springs Road, but they were still excited about looking at this process again. This time, the students couldn't get enough of the hands-on experience, asking for pieces of the seared nose and lower lip to cut once the meat was done. Dullen said she tries to teach her students about traditional values at least once a year. She always asks students to keep an eye out for a possible moose head to be donated. So if you know where there's an extra moose head, you know some students who are looking for some up there in Fairbanks, Alaska. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you for joining in, and happy moosehead soup.